exhibits and processing the scene at 34 Fairview Road in Canton, Massachusetts.
When you arrived at 34 Fairview Road, was there anybody else there?
Yes.
Who was there?
Lieutenant Tully, members of the Massachusetts State Police CERT team, the Special Emergency Response Team.
Are you part of the CERT team?
I am not.
Did you see what the CERT team was doing?
They were conducting an area search very front of the lawn and the street or road in front of 34 Fairview.
Did you have any role in that actual searching of evidence?
No, I did not.
What was your role, limited role that night?
To process any evidence that was discovered during the search.
When you say process the evidence, can you explain briefly what does that mean?
Sure, I was had evidence bags, and if a piece of evidence or an item was found, I would place that item into the evidence bag.
And why would you do that?
To secure it.
How would you become aware if there was a piece of evidence found?
The CERT team would alert the supervisor, Lieutenant Tully, or myself that there was an item or a piece of evidence, and Lieutenant Tully would then take a photograph of it, and then I would secure the piece of evidence in a bag, evidence bag.
Do you know if those photographs were time-stamped?
I believe so.
Your role was to put the evidence in the bag and return it to the evidence room?
Correct.
Did you do that?
Yes.
If I could begin, I'd like to show you on the screen a series of exhibits. If we could start with Exhibit 74, please. Trooper, do you recognize that item?
Yes.
What is it?
That is a black Nike shoe.
Did you see that item that night?
Yes.
74A, please. 74B. Thank you. Is that the same sneaker?
Yes, sir.
After you were alerted to that sneaker, did you place that sneaker into an evidence bag?
Yes.
Did you bring that item with you today?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have gloves?
Yes, sir.
Do you want the lights on, Mr. Brennan?
Please, thank you, Your Honor. And Ms. Gilman, you can take the photo down, please. With the court's permission, I'm going to move this piece of evidence, item into evidence.
Okay.
Let me ask you a few questions before you open it. Could you stand and show that
Yes, sir.
bag? There's red tape on it. What's that for?
To secure the bag closed.
If the bag is open, is it then retaped?
Yes.
Do you write on the outside of the bag?
Yes.
Why do you do that?
To memorialize the date, time when the evidence was collected.
Could you open the bag and show us what's in it?
Yes, sir. Sorry.
With the court's permission, can he show the item?
Yes.
Thank you. Trooper, is that the same item that you found that night?
Yes, sir.
If you could place it back in the bag, I'd ask for this to be marked as an exhibit.
All right, any objections, Dean? Any?
Exhibit 77.
Sir, you mentioned there's writing on the outside of the bag.
Yes.
What type of information do you write on the bag?
Date, time, location, who's collecting it.
The time that you write in the bag, is that the specific time the item was found, or does that represent a different time?
That could represent a different time.
And why would that be?
If you're processing multiple things at once, you're bagging things at different times, then when you seal the bag, that could be the time that is annotated on the bag.
Can the item be found before the time on that bag?
Yes.
Would you ever write a time later than when the item was found?
Yes.
I'd like to move now to Exhibit 75, please. And preferably 75A, please. Do you recognize that item?
Yes.
Is that one of the items you bagged that night?
Yes.
And if we could turn to 76A, please. Do you recognize that item?
Yes.
Is that an item that you bagged that night?
Yes.
Do you have both of those items with you?
Yes, sir.
Could you produce those, please? Ms. Gilman, you could take that down, please. Thank you. 570.
Yes, sir.
With the court's permission, I'd ask the trooper to open the bag and show the jury. Sir, on those items that are stickers, did you put the stickers on them?
I did not.
Do you know where the stickers come from?
I do not.
Do you know if these items are ever sent to anybody other than your evidence locker? Are they ever removed and given to lab personnel and technicians?
Yes.
Do you know if that was done in this case?
Yes, I do.
Inside that bag, is there just two pieces, or is there another piece in that bag?
There was another piece in the bag.
When you put the taillight pieces in that bag, how many pieces did you put in the bag?
I put 2.
Do you know if the other piece in the bag is a piece that broke off, or do you know how that arrived there?
I do not.
Could you just pull out that other small piece and show the jury as well? Is that smaller piece consistent with the same color as the two bigger pieces?
Yes.
Is it consistent with the same material?
Yes.
If you could put that back in the bag, please. I'd move this into evidence, please.
Okay. So, Mr. Brennan, I leave it to you and the witness how you do that part.
Yes. Sir, in the small chip piece, you don't know how it became chipped?
I do not.
I'd ask you to remove that chip. I'd like you to safely secure it, bring with you, and bag it when you leave.
Yes, sir.
And then I'd like to introduce that exhibit.
78.
So we're going to mark the little chip.
You'd
Ms.
like to mark
Giannetti
it?
asked to
Okay.
mark that. Yes.
Then we're going to submit that for identification. So the small chip that I
Madam
asked you to
Clerk.
secure.
Madam Court Reporter has an envelope for that.
Thank you very much.
Exhibit 78.
Thank you.
Exhibit BB for identification.
Thank you. Trooper, we have one more bag of items to go through.
Yes.
Could I have Exhibit 73, please? Sir, if you could look at Exhibit 73 on the screen, do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what is it?
A piece of clear plastic.
Is that piece of clear plastic, when you saw it, was it at ground level?
Yes,
Did you bag that item?
I did.
When you bagged that item, was there another item along with it in the same bag?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
So I'm showing you a photo. You recognize what's in it?
Yes.
What's in it?
The piece of clear plastic.
Is that the second piece in the bag, separate from the last exhibit?
Yes.
Fair and accurate depiction of how you saw it that morning?
Yes, sir.
I'd move this into evidence as an exhibit, please.
Okay. There's no objection, Ms. Giannetti?
There's no objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 79.
With the court's permission, could we show Exhibit 79 to the jury?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, would you be able to close? Thank you. You recognize that item, sir?
Yes.
And did you bring those two items with you, the past exhibit and this exhibit?
Yes.
Could you produce those, please? Are these different in color than the last pieces you showed?
Yes.
With the court's permission, could the trooper show these pieces?
Yes.
Thank you, trooper. I'd move these items into evidence.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right.
Exhibit 80.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trooper Keefe.
Thank you, sir.
All right, any questions, Ms. Giannetti?
Please, Your Honor, thank you.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Trooper Keefe, you testified that you received the cell phone of Jennifer McCabe and of Kerry Roberts.
Correct.
With regard to the cell phone of Jennifer McCabe in particular, you had her sign what is called a consent form, correct?
That's correct.
What is a consent form?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Before you take us back to Fairview Road, I want to ask you a couple of questions about John's house at Meadows. Are you familiar with his house?
Yes.
Have you seen the front of his house before?
Yes, I have.
Are you familiar with his driveway?
Yes.
Are you familiar with whether there's any surveillance system at Mr. O'Keefe's house?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. McCabe, I'm showing you what has been previously marked as Exhibit 6. Do you recognize that photo?
Yes, I do.
And what is it?
That's John O'Keefe's house.
Could we provide Exhibit 6 for the jury, please? On that screen, is that Mr. O'Keefe's home?
Yes.
I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 8. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what is it?
That is the side of Mr. O'Keefe's house, the 2 garage doors.
Is there any indication of surveillance?
Is this a Ring camera right here? Looks,
Is that what John O'Keefe's side of his house looks like?
yes.
I want to show you Exhibit 10. Do you recognize what's in that photo?
Yes.
What is it?
It is the driveway at John O'Keefe's.
You see a car to the left?
Yes.
Do you know whose car that is?
Yes, that's Miss Reed's.
Is that where you left it the night before? Those early morning hours when you drove to Mr. O'Keefe's house?
Yes.
I want to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 11. Do you recognize what's in that photo?
Yes, Miss Reed's vehicle.
Is that the vehicle that Ms. Reed showed you with the broken, missing taillight that morning?
Yes, it is.
You mentioned earlier in the night you spoke to John O'Keefe when you called him or he called you about directions to Fairview Road.
Yes.
And you also shared that you had a phone conversation offering directions.
Yes, I did.
Did you tell John that the house at Fairview was near Bella's mom's house?
Sustained as to form, Mr. Brennan.
Okay. What did you tell John as far as directions to Fairview? How did you mark it for him?
I told him to go by, past Bella's house, the Bella's Street, and then to follow it down to the end.
Now I want you to take us back where we were yesterday when we left off. You had brought us to Fairview Road. You had found John.
Yes.
You shared with us that you were trying chest compressions. Before the chest compressions, did you make a phone call?
I called 911.
Your Honor, I'd like to move to introduce a copy of that 911 call.
Okay. Do you have something physically to... Thank you.
Ms. McLaughlin does.
Thank you.
With,
Exhibit 45.
Thank you.
with the court's permission, I'd like to play Exhibit 45.
Yes.
No, this is for what emergency.
Yes, I need someone to come to 34 Fairview Road in Canton, Mass. There's a man passed out in the snow.
You can't hold on, but you can't really go. You can't get to know, okay?
Yeah, I don't know why I did that.
You have to tell us about that line.
I just keep going. Like, if you guys that area in 6 feet, okay?
I'm trying to tell line, because it's him.
Okay. I know. Where's the blanket? I don't see blanket parents.
911, what's your emergency?
Yes, I need someone to come immediately to 34 Fairview Road, Canton, Mass.
What's going on?
There's a guy unresponsive in the snow.
In the south, 34?
Yes, 34, the Albert resident, yes. I just pulled up and found it.
Okay, 34 Fairview?
34 Fairview, Canton, Mass, yes.
911 is under order, where's your emergency? Hello?
Yes, I'm sorry. Can you come to 34 Fairview Road in Houston?
34 Fairview?
Yes, there's a man unresponsive in the snow.
Okay, what else?
He's got it back here, okay?
Okay, what's going on? Is he face down?
We just flipped him over.
Okay. And who's that in the background? Is that someone related?
That's his girlfriend. His name is John O'Keefe.
Okay, how old is he?
John is 46 years old.
46. How long has he been outside?
I don't know. I don't know. He got out of the car and
Is he breathing?
a couple of hours. Is he, Carrie? Is he? I don't. I don't know if he's breathing. There are two women trying to do his body, and they're hysterical.
Okay, can you just try to ask him? I know it's tough, but we already have the fire department going. They just got to know.
Okay. Is he breathing, you guys? It doesn't seem to be breathing.
Okay, do they know how to do CPR? Do they want to attempt CPR?
Yes, he's got to do CPR. No, I guess he's gone.
Okay, they don't feel comfortable doing so?
No, I think he's passed away.
Okay. All right, we have the fire department and the police department on the way. If everyone's declining CPR, then I'll hang up with you, and if anything changes, you can give us a call back. Where are you guys outside?
I'm right up front of the car. I know, I'm on the phone with the ambulance. I know, honey, I know. Just, Carrie, you gotta get off of me. Carrie, you gotta get off of him.
You know if there was any alcohol or drugs involved?
He has been out.
They've been out drinking.
Yes, I'm talking hours about maybe, and I think he's, I don't know how long he's been in the snow.
Okay, is there any bleeding or anything? Maybe his head out?
Yes, possibly, there's going to be bleeding in the face.
Okay, bleeding from the face. All right.
Yes.
And how big's the pool of blood, if there is any?
Something's coming out the nose, and one of the women is doing CPR.
Okay, one of them is doing CPR?
Yes, we're both working on him.
All right, if you want CPR, and just give us a call back if he becomes responsive, right? But we're on the way.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. McCabe, describe your mental state when you were speaking to 911.
I guess the best way to describe it was I was in shock. My heart was racing. I was trying to be as helpful as I could and get the information to the most important information out as quick as I could to the 911 operators. But also the scene there with Karen and Kerry was a bit chaotic between the two of them. So I was just trying my best to be as calm as I could, to get help there as fast as I could, and to answer their questions the best that I could.
Before you told the 911 operator John O'Keefe's name and his age, you said there's a man in the snow. Do you know why you chose those words?
I think I just wanted to get out the most specific details. So a man in the snow versus, John O'Keefe and into a story. I think I just was get the details to them as fast as possible to get help there to him as fast as possible.
When you told the 911 operator that your friend John O'Keefe was the person lying in the snow, how did you know his age?
We used to joke because he was a couple months older than me. So I would, say, oh, well, you're older than me. It was a silly little thing between friends.
When you called the 911 operator, had Kerry and the defendant already been around or near John?
Yes.
Do you know if they had begun trying CPR before you called 911?
I'm not sure if they had, because Karen had straddled him and was lifted her shirt, was warming him up, and then Kerry was yelling at her to get off. And I think when Kerry got the blankets and was trying to put him under John, I think as she started to move him and wipe him, blood started to come out. And then Karen was afraid that he was going to choke on his blood and wanted to move him on his side, but then Kerry was yelling at her, we can't move him. And this was kind of all going on while I was talking to 911.
You described what you saw, and you said at some point he was bleeding from the face area. Was that before or after he was moved?
After.
Before he was moved, did you see any active bleeding?
No.
After you called 911, what do you do next?
I think I called my sister, and she didn't answer. And then, as I think I called her as I was walking over to John, and she didn't answer. And then I immediately got down on the ground, and Kerry Roberts asked me to take over.
How long did you try to help John for?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
How long were you and the defendant and Miss Roberts there before someone else arrived?
Police officer was the first to arrive. In the moments, it seemed like a long time, but I think it was fairly quick that they arrived.
Any point during the time when you tried to help Mr. O'Keefe and the first police officer arrived, at any point did you see any signs of life from Mr. O'Keefe?
No.
When the police officer first arrived, do you remember what happened next?
I remember it was very chaotic, but there was talk about a spotlight. And I remember, I think I got up and ran to kind of wave the, to get the police officer's attention so he could see where we were.
And then what happens?
The police officer, I'm not sure specific, I do remember him asking about John. I think he said, is he a drug user? He was just asking some basic questions.
And what's the environment? What's going on around you?
Karen's just running around crazy, like just yelling, screaming, kind of like a ping pong.
What are you trying to do?
I was just trying to talk to the officer. I guess I just went into this like type of mode of, all right, I have to just talk to him, get the information out, figure out like how we can best help John and like what happened to him and try to save him ultimately.
And what happens next?
More officers begin to come, fire and EMT, so the scene becomes active with a lot of different presence. You know, John, I think they lift John onto a board at one point. The officers are asking us questions. Karen's kind of coming over, talking to the questions, and then kind of just running away, and then she just runs back over. She's doing a lot of screaming, a lot of repetitive, is he dead, is he dead, is he dead? You know, could I have hit him? Did I hit him? Kerry, I think, Kerry's off kind of making phone calls, I believe, to John's family.
Do you know what time the first responders lifted John from the ground and put him on that bed?
I don't know a time, but it was...
Okay, that's the only question.
Okay.
You heard your 911 call. Do you know the time of that 911 call?
Not off the top of my head, no.
At some point, did you talk to a number of different people at the scene?
Yes.
And who were you talking to?
The first officer was Officer Saraf. I know I spoke with him. I spoke with an Officer Lank, an Officer Good. There were other officers. I don't remember their names. There were EMTs. I don't remember their names either.
You have lived in this area for a long time?
Yes.
You're active in the community?
Yes.
Did you know Sergeant Good from before that night?
I knew of him. I didn't know him personally.
Did you know Detective Lank?
Yes, I knew him.
How did you know him?
We were friendly.
Your children ever associate with each other?
Not until recently.
After you had a chance to speak to some of the officers, did you move around at all yourself?
Yes, I the officers would talk to us here and then a little bit over to the side. I tried to comfort Miss Reed. At one point, Miss Reed was very upset, and one of the officers thought it would be best if maybe she went and just sat in one of the cruisers for a little bit, because she was just doing a lot of screaming and yelling, and I think they were just trying to, get work on John and make the scene a little less chaotic. So I went into the back of the car with her, and Kerry Roberts came over. And then we all were just sat in the back of the, Karen and I kind of were scrunched and sitting in the back, and Kerry was at the door of the cruiser.
Why did you get in the car with the defendant?
She was crying. She asked me to get in. We held hands. We prayed. She did have blood on her hands, and she said, "Could I have gotten my period? Who's going to take care of the kids?" She just kind of was all over the place. And then at one point, we saw them moving John towards the ambulance. And at that point, Miss Reed started yelling to Miss Roberts, "Go check on him. Are they working on him? Is he dead? Is he dead?" And at that point, myself and Miss Reed got out of the car, and she started yelling and pulling on me to Google hypothermia and Google how long it takes for somebody, to die in the cold.
When the defendant first asked you to Google an inquiry about hypothermia, were you still inside the police cruiser, or were you outside?
Outside.
What was the weather? I know it's an obvious question, but how cold was it?
It was very cold, windy. The snow was blowing. As I stated, I have multiple sclerosis, so when I am out in either extremely hot or cold temperatures, I lose the feeling and sensation in my fingers, which obviously made the Googling very hard for me to do because of my, motor skills.
So when you were outside of the car with the defendant and she had asked you to do a search regarding hypothermia, did you try to do that?
Yes, I did.
Do you know the exact time from your memory? Not from reading or learning, but from your memory. Do you remember the exact time you did that?
No.
Was it after the police came that morning?
Yes.
Had you ever attempted to search about hypothermia any time before that moment, that morning?
No.
Or that day?
No.
That week?
No.
Was this the first time that morning after the defendant asked you to search that you searched that phrase?
Yes, it was.
And did you complete your search and get a result?
So I don't know what came up, because I think as I entered it, I think I misspelled things. And so then I think I tried a second search. And again, I don't think I even paid attention to what came up, because we were already on to the next thing. Karen was already moving and screaming about, the next thing to Kerry. Are they working on him? Is he dead?
Did the defendant move somewhere from the point when she first asked you to try to Google about hypothermia to something else?
She was next to me, and then I think she took off. Like, she kept kind of running off.
And what did you do?
I believe as they were I think I stood there, I believe as they were putting John into the ambulance, I went back kind of to the original spot where we had been talking to the police. And at that point, a new officer might have come, because I remember talking to multiple officers there.
At some point, did you go back towards the area of Ms. Roberts' car?
Yes, that's where I'm referring to, sorry.
At some point, were you with the defendant when she spoke to an officer and a first responder?
Yes.
Do you remember if the first responder was a man or a woman?
I remember there was a woman right next to us, yes.
Do you remember if that was before or after the defendant asked you to search about hypothermia?
I'd be guessing if I then don't.
Don't guess.
Mm-hmm.
When the defendant was speaking to the first responder, the woman. Were you near?
Yes.
Did you hear or do you remember the defendant saying anything to the first responder?
Yes.
What did she say?
She told the first responder, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
When she told the first responder, I hit him, how did you react?
I was like startled, kind of like, what are you saying? What are you talking about?
Did you say anything to the defendant?
I think after the second or third time she was saying it, I was like, Karen, Karen, like, what are you saying?
Why were you trying to interrupt her?
Because I thought she was just talking crazy, and I'm saying, why is she saying she hit him?
Were you trying to look out for her?
Yeah.
Sustained. I'll strike it. You can ask it differently.
What was your motivation for trying to interrupt the defendant making the statements to the first responder?
Karen was hysterical, irrational, kind of.
I'll move on.
Okay, I'm going to see counsel at sidebar for just a minute, please.
May I? After you made the search at the defendant's request for an inquiry regarding hypothermia, did you have a chance to speak to the officers further?
Yes.
Did they ask you to do anything or go anywhere?
Yes. Officer Lank asked me to go into my sister's house and to wake them up.
And your sister's name again?
My sister, Nicole.
And that is the house you were in the night before?
Yes.
And after you spoke to the officer, they requested you go in to speak to your sister, did you?
Yes.
Was there any directive on what you should speak to your sister about?
No.
After the officers asked you to go into the house, did you?
Yes, I did.
Do you remember what door you went through?
Yes, I went through the front door.
Was the door locked?
Yes.
How did you get in?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said, was it unlocked?
No, I asked if it was locked.
Oh, sorry. It was unlocked.
As you're approaching the house, were there any lights on?
No.
Was it dark?
Yes.
Any sign of any movement inside the house before you went in?
No.
Take us through walking through the front door. What happens?
So I went in the front door. I opened the door. I walked up the stairs into their hallway, and then I think I knocked on their door.
Bedroom door?
Their bedroom door. And then I opened the door. I went in, and I walked over to the bed, and I was like, Brian, Nicole, because I was like, I was in a position where I felt like the world was going on around me, so much was happening, but I also was aware that I was just about to wake up two people that are sound asleep, and they're going to see me standing over their bed and be startled, wondering, what am I doing here?
So what happens?
So it took a minute or two, and then Brian woke up, and he immediately was like startled and was like, Jennifer, what's going on? What are you doing? And then I believe I tried the best I could to say what was going on. I think I said, we found John.
You don't need to describe
Okay.
again, but I want to know their reaction and your interaction with your sister and Brian Albert.
They woke up startled and confused.
Did you have a conversation with them?
Yes.
How long was that conversation?
Brief. They got up, got dressed, I spoke to them.
And where did you go and where did they go?
Then all three of us went down the stairs.
The upstairs to the downstairs?
Upstairs to downstairs,
And
yes.
upstairs is the second level, is downstairs the first level?
Yes,
As you come down the stairs, can you see the front door?
yes.
Is there anybody in the house at that point?
I saw Officer Lank.
In the house?
Yes.
Do you know if he had been invited in?
I have no idea.
When you came down the stairs and saw Officer Lank, where was your sister and Brian Albert?
They were walking with me down the stairs.
And did you see whether or not the officer spoke with your sister and your brother?
He did.
Brother-in-law? I'm sorry.
He did, yes.
Were you there during that conversation?
No,
How long was that conversation, do you know?
not sure.
Where did you go when the officer was speaking to your sister and your brother-in-law inside their home?
I was standing at the front doorway, and then my husband, Matt, had just arrived.
What happened next?
I started talking to Matt, and almost immediately Officer Lang came, got Matt, and asked if he could talk to him outside.
Okay. At this point, I want to go back and show you some video. Have you seen video in this case before?
Yes.
I'd like to ask the court's permission to display Exhibit 4, and I would like to walk through some of the video.
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if you kindly put on Exhibit 4.
Data extraction of John O'Keefe's cell phone.
All right, ask it to be marked simply for identification, please.
Okay.
Exhibit A, identification.
Thank you.
Second folder.
Yes, the raw data extraction of Jen McCabe's cell phone that I created.
Thank you, sir. Your Honor, ask it to be marked for identification as well.
All right.
Exhibit B for identification.
Thank you.
Trooper, you shared with us that you downloaded the extraction of the phones that you identified, and you made reports based on specific identified features. For example, a conversation between two people.
Yes, so I didn't do the extraction of Jen's phone, but I made those reports with the PDFs from the data extraction.
Relative to Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant's phones, you created a document that provided us the phone calls between them on January 29th?
Yes, that's correct.
And separately, you also provided a document that included all of the chats or text messages between John O'Keefe and the defendant on January 29, 2022.
Yes, it also included the 28th.
Thank you.
Yes.
And in that compilation, did you put together or do you create or review a PowerPoint of those?
Yes, I did.
And what was the point of that?
Just to show the texts and calls in a chronological order, because that way you're not looking at two different documents trying to compare and contrast the calls to text messages when each is coming in.
And did you begin that PowerPoint presentation with a call at 2:16:10 on January 28, 2022?
Yes, that's correct.
And are there additional chats or text messages earlier that morning?
Yes, there's a handful starting around 9:45 a.m.
May I
Yes.
approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Handing you a folder, sir. Could you take a look at it? Let us know if you recognize what's in it.
Yes. So this is the bulk of this is the PowerPoint calls and text messages, and then at the beginning there's the messages from before 2:16 in the morning.
I'd like to introduce this as an exhibit, Your Honor.
Okay.
No objection, Your Honor.
Great. Thank you.
Exhibit 33.
With court's permission, I'd ask the witness to read the text messages from the morning hours, and then we begin the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Do you have a hard copy of those for me?
It was provided. I'll see if we have another copy if you don't have it.
All right. I have. It's in here. The pre-morning hours. The ones that we discussed at Sidebar. If you don't have them,
The defense has a copy for you, Your Honor.
thank you.
Madam? I'm sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Little.
Okay, thank you.
May we begin, Your Honor?
Please.
Could you first read the text messages from that morning to the jury?
Yes. Apologize if I misspell things or state things. Start time, all right. It's a little different than the format I had before. All right, this is from Karen Reed to John O'Keefe. You have really hurt me this time. This was sent at 9:49:20 a.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant. I'm sorry, this has been an issue with me for 8 years. It physically hurts me to see everyone else in their life do things for them, and I'm forced to always be the bad guy. This was sent at 10:02:56 a.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. I'm not the same as everyone else. Most of the time I try to do what is healthy/smart for them. More importantly, I try to support you in what you need. You just lashed out at me and said terrible things. I don't know how you've gotten to this point with me when I'm just trying my hardest. You made your point and continue to beat me down. I have a lot going on too. Physically, I am falling apart and trying to get answers and help. 10:09:49 a.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. I am just your girlfriend. I am not a perfect parent. I am trying very hard and sometimes treat them - nothing like I used to. 10:46 a.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant. I know. I'm sorry for lashing out. I'm just hurting and struggle daily with them. Always feel like I'm failing at this parenting thing. I wasn't built for this. 10:14:12 a.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe. Kaylee isn't perfect, but everything wonderful about her is because of you. 12:21:36 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, an emoji is sent at 12:21:59 on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. It's true, I know she's her mother's daughter, but she wouldn't be so bright and successful if she lived with anyone else. 12:22:51 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. Wow, Kristen just sent 2 back-to-back messages to not lose your faith in the kids. 12:31:28 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, or in yourself, at 12:31:41 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, there's 2 emojis sent at 12:32:06 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, no, and there's 2 emojis. Life can pick you up sometimes. Please be happy with them and put away your frustrations for the rest of the day. And be so proud of yourself, JJ. That's 12:33:35 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, that's what bothers me more than anything. Should have sent Peg's or Sarah's W-2s. We are all equal guardians. 1:18:21 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, maybe you can call someone. 1:21:55 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, like who? 1:46:42 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, what time are you coming here? 1:47:38 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, it's another emoji sent, 2:05:30 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I don't know what time, feel kind of out of it, just trying to clear my head, 2:06:07 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, he writes, okay, 2:06:25 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, text me when you guys settle in later, 2:06:44 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, sure, 2:06:58 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to, oh, no, it's cut off here, sir.
Yeah. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
That must be where the, so,
Would it be helpful if I take it out of the binder for you?
I believe it, yeah, it goes to the next one, so I'll start. Yeah, sorry.
With the court's permission, we'll begin the PowerPoint.
Yes.
At your leisure.
Okay. The phone calls, text messages, and then we'll start with the first slide. This is from the defendant to John O'Keefe. I feel pretty shitty about how this morning went down. I know you said sorry, but it really stung, especially especially when I've been trying pretty hard lately. I feel like a loser turning around, just coming back over after everything you said. 2:16:10 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, not sure what you want me to do. I said I'm sorry and I was out of line. If you prefer to stay home, I totally get it. 2:17:16 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, things in my own life have been difficult too, you know. 2:17:33 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, I know. 2:17:40 p.m. on the 28th. At 2:17:45 p.m., the defendant calls John. The phone call is answered and they speak for 2 minutes, 22 seconds. 2:23:02 p.m., the defendant calls John. That's again answered. At 1:00, and they speak for 1 minute, 2 seconds. At 2:24:17 p.m., the defendant calls John, and the call is rejected. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, tell me if you're interested in someone else. Can't think of any other reason you've been like this. 2:25:18 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, nope. 2:25:33 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, things haven't been great between us for a while. Ever consider that? 2:26:03 p.m. on the 28th. At 2:28:40 p.m., the defendant calls John. That call is rejected.
Mr. Greeno, can you explain to us the difference between not answered and rejected?
Yes, so if the call is not answered, that means the call rang out and goes to voicemail. If the call is rejected, that is someone actively hitting the send to voicemail button to disable the call to stop it from ringing. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, kids are here, not in the mood to talk. 2:29:03 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, so you're not into it anymore. That's fine, but I don't want to keep trying and you keep treating me like this. 2:29:12 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I'm trying to hug and kiss you this morning and you whack me in the face with a pillow. 2:29:59 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, last night you're basically like, yeah, what about when we talk about the future? So why don't you just admit you're not into so much anymore? 2:30:23 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, not how it went down, but okay. 2:30:26 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, can you please admit your head is out of the game with us? 2:30:52 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, sick of always arguing and fighting. It's been weekly for several months now. So yeah, I'm not as quick to jump back into being lovey-dovey as you apparently. 2:32:28 p.m. on the 28th. At 2:32:47 p.m., the defendant calls John. That call is rejected. John O'Keefe to the defendant, OMG, stop calling. 2:32:54 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, then why would you start with me this morning? 2:32:58 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, you're setting me up to fail. 2:33:05 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, you started a number of fights from your end. 2:33:26 p.m. on the 28th. And John O'Keefe to the defendant, I've explained it a few times already, not doing it again. 2:33:31 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, so you're not into this anymore. 2:33:41 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, not into fighting all the time, correct. 2:34:03 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, if you tell me you're interested in someone else, you will never hear from me again. You can have all the space in the world. 2:34:11 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, he sends an emoji. 2:34:19 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, then stop starting with me. 2:34:20 p.m. on the 28th. 2:34:29 p.m. the defendant calls John. He rejects the call. John O'Keefe to Karen, the defendant, I'm not answering. Stop calling. 2:34:42 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, can you please answer after how you treated me earlier? 2:34:43 p.m. on the 28th. 2:34:54 p.m. The defendant calls John. That's rejected. John O'Keefe to the defendant. Kaylee is right here. 2:35:02 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe. You start a rager with me out of nowhere and then tell me you're sick of fighting with me. 2:35:41 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe. I'm going to grab a drink in a bit. 2:38:14 p.m. on the 28th. 2:38:42 p.m. The defendant calls John. That call is rejected. The defendant to John O'Keefe, can you please answer? 2:38:52 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, no, Karen, not sure why you need to announce that you're going, not sure why you need to announce that you're grabbing a drink, but have fun. 2:39:46 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, seeing if you want to meet me later. 2:40:22 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, can you please call me? 2:40:32 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, have to take them to the doctor. He has practice. 2:40:55 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, yeah, 5 minutes. 2:41:17 p.m. on the 28th. At 2:43:01 p.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. At 2:43:45 p.m., the defendant calls John. The call is rejected. John O'Keefe to the defendant. My father just walked in. 2:43:58 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe. Okay, can you please call me for 2 minutes? 2:44:14 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant. Not right now. 2:44:23 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe. I'm there when anyone else needs me. 2:44:26 p.m. on the 28th. At 2:45:32 p.m., the defendant calls John. The call is rejected. The defendant calls Mr. O'Keefe. Yes, John, you gave me utter grief this morning. I'd like you to call me for a minute. 2:46:16 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe. I've been trying to get over the hump with is arguing, and now you tell me you're not into doing things, and you don't want to fight weekly, but fly off the handle at 8 a.m. with me, like you're setting me up to fail. 2:47:08 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe. I've been dealing with my own personal crisis over things I have zero control over. I'd like to lean on you too sometimes. Instead, I just hear everything I've done wrong. 2:48:34 p.m. on the 28th. At 2:56 p.m., the defendant calls John. The call is rejected. At 2:51:13 p.m., the defendant calls John. It's rejected. 2:52:37 p.m., John calls the defendant. It's not answered. At 2:53:56, the defendant calls John. Again, not answered. The defendant, John O'Keefe, you seriously cannot pick up the phone for 2 seconds. 2:54:13 p.m. 2:58:05 p.m., the defendant calls John. It's rejected. At 2:59:13, John calls the defendant. The call is answered and they speak for 4 minutes, 59 seconds. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, why don't you meet me at Hillside at 4:30/5, 3:08:55 p.m. John O'Keefe to the defendant sends an emoji at 3:10:08 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, or whenever you get, or whenever you get everyone settled, 3:10:35 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, like I said, doctor now, and he has practice till 6. If you want me to go start, if you want to go start drinking, then go for it. 3:36:21 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe, I didn't know the times of his practice. 3:36:40 p.m. on the 28th. And the defendant to John O'Keefe, I just want to give you space at the house without me there. So rather meet you out than meet at the house. 3:37:01 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, yeah, well now there's a 72-year-old taking up shop on my couch. 3:37:36 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe, yeah, that too. 3:37:46 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, is he going to Collins? 3:38:23 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, not tonight. 3:38:32 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, so do you plan on going out tonight? 3:39:01 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, Karen, I don't know. 3:39:17 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, you're like jonesing to drink, so go. 3:39:43 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, okay, well, after how this morning went down, I don't think I need to be back over there with you. Get frustrated at how I am with the kids. Has nothing to do with drinking. 3:40 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I am paranoid now that everything I do with them is problematic. So rather see you for a minute without it, kids around. 3:40:24 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, what's your plan at 4:47:16 p.m. on the 28th? From the defendant to John O'Keefe, don't have one. 4:50:09 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, so still home. 4:50:26 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe, yes. 4:45 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, we just got home, waiting to see what Papa decides here, or else I have to get Patrick at 6. 4:59:45 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant John O'Keefe, okay. 5:01:55 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, so are you staying home or coming here? 5:02:23 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, waiting to see what you end up doing. I don't want to hang out at the house too much, like I said. 5:03:40 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I think it's clear me around the kids, I think it's clear me around with the kids around is slowly killing our relationship, and our relationship is much more important to me. 5:04:16 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, well, there's a blizzard coming, so we'll be inside all weekend. 5:04:19 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe, it will be over by noon tomorrow. 5:04:44 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, don't think so. 5:05:27 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe, I don't want to keep having this constant conflict of the dynamic of the four of us. The harder I try, the more it kills our relationship as a couple. It feels like utter shit to be in that position. Rather just meet you out for drinks when you figure out what your night looks like. 5:06:45 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, well, I have no idea what's going on, so do what you want. 5:07:34 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, need to figure out what everyone here is doing. All I know now is Madeline is coming over. No clue about Patrick yet, or if Papa is planning on hanging it for a few more hours. 5:09:29 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, okay, well, when you know the story, and if you want me to come up, let me know. 5:12:36 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, no, Karen, you decide what you want to do. 5:13:18 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I know your heart isn't in this anymore. I felt it for a while, and especially lately. I'm willing to try more, but not if you approaching the point of indifference. If you want me to come up and you can head out for a while, then say so when you know what your father is doing. 5:14:23 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, you come up and I head out, really? Emoji. 5:15:48. John O'Keefe to the defendant, I've told you already, I don't bounce back as quickly as you do after we have a battle. 5:16:52 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, no, head out together with an emoji. 5:17:49 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, or meet out. 5:17:54 on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, gonna send Patrick to Collins tonight. They're picking him up around 7. Mike may hang out too when he brings Matt over. So why don't you just come over? 5:19:42 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, Mike doesn't want to go out for a bit. 5:20:20 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I would like to, been a shit day from the jump. 5:20:33 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, probably 5:20:39 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, I just got sober an hour ago. 5:20:56 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I'll text you, hang with Mike for a few. I don't need to butt in. Text me if/when you think you may head out. 5:25:12 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, can you send me Tim Zoll's contact info, please? 5:26:38 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, I paid the last bill. 5:27:08 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, you didn't have to do that, thanks. 5:27:43 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, are you really not going to accept my friend request? 5:32:33 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, an emoji on what, FB? 5:33:01 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, yeah, we've been going out for 2 years. 5:33:20 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, I haven't gone on. You defriended me over a year ago, I believe. 5:33:48 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, Kerry texted that they're headed out in a bit. 6:05:29 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, okay, 6:14:55 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, she's going to let me know where, 6:17:51 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, so you're going to meet them, 6:18:12 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, just presenting it as an option, wouldn't mind hanging out with them for a drink. 6:19 p.m. on the 28th. Sorry. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, is Mike over? 6:27:26 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, yes, 6:29:45 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, sounds you're like good with getting together tonight, 6:31:32 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, was hoping after this morning you'd be interested in smoothing things over with me, 6:32:24 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, told you to come over, but you insisted on meeting me out somewhere. 6:33:44 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, Mike is a little off with me for a while now. I've said that multiple times. 6:34 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to Karen, the defendant, time to get over it, Karen. He's fine. He was fine the other night when he came by. 6:38:09 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, yeah, wouldn't mind hanging out with other people, like another female too. 6:39:09 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, where are you meeting them? 6:39:28 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I don't have plans with them. She just said they're headed out in a bit and will text when they land somewhere. 6:39:52 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, if you want to go out with Mike solo, that's fine. Just let me know. 6:40:17 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, I already told you what you should do. Not going to keep doing this. 6:41:07 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I asked to let me know if you guys are going to head out. I haven't been out for drinks this week and had a shit week and a shit day. And I dread Kaylee or Pat is going to get chatty with me the second I walk in, and that is going to irritate you. 6:43:21 on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, Pat is leaving, Kay is with Mad Cam. 6:44:02 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, I'll text Chris then. 6:46:44 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, we're headed out shortly. What's your plan, Karen? 7:06:13 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, do you want me to join or no? 7:06:37 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, yes, wasn't sure if you were meeting the Currans. 7:07:04 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, they are not out drinking yet. 7:07:40 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, where are you headed? 7:09:22 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, trying to decide maybe McCarthy's. 7:14:48 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, okay then, let me know where you decide. I'm still down in Enfield. 7:21:50 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, text me when you leave. Still waiting on McKinney's. 7:22:28 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I'm having issues with my hot water, so had to text someone to take a look. 7:24:11 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, an emoji, you trying to piss me off. 7:25:35 on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, hope your plumber buddy that you texted is hot. 7:26:24 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, nope, my shower only got lukewarm and now my sink won't run hot at all. The plumber I used is right down the road. 7:26:27 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I turned that temp thing in the basement all the way up. 7:26:52 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, check the hot water heater and see if it's leaking. 7:26:52 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe, it's not. 7:26:59 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, don't do that. 7:27:01 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, is the pilot lit? 7:27:08 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I was trying to get my shower hot. 7:27:12 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe, yes, 7:27:14 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, don't turn it up. Don't turn it all the way up. 7:27:26 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, it will burn out. 7:27:32 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I had this issue twice before and it wasn't a disaster. I just can't remember what the cause was. 7:27:41 on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, just turn it back to where it was and get over here. 7:28:08 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I don't want to come home in a blizzard and then really be up shit creek. 7:28:53 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, so you're going home tonight, 7:29:18 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, or tomorrow or whenever. I've had a chill all day since my shower. 7:29:45 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, it's going to snow all day tomorrow, no driving. 7:30:05 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, we're headed to McCarthy's. 7:41:29 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, okay, let me know if you end up leaving. 7:41:57 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, why? Now you're not coming. 7:42:27 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I'm waiting for the plumber. I actually think he's in the driveway. 7:42:56 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, we're taking Mike's car, so I'm relying on you for a ride home if he leaves. 7:43:10 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, he's not going home after. 7:43:27 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, 8 o'clock on a Friday, emoji, 7:43:31 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, he may have to get Michael, 7:43:46 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, you have a plumber coming over at 8. Knowing me and Papa could have handled it. Good luck. 7:44:36 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I have always told you I will not put either of you out of your way the way everyone else in your life does. I knew it wasn't working right when you were at the doctor's with Kaylee, and I knew neither of you could get here. And this guy, Richie, fixed it last time, whatever it was. He was supposed to be here at 5, 7:48:01 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, if it's not a quick fix, I'll tell him to forget it. 7:48:20 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, if you need a new water heater, don't let him do it. 7:55:04 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant is from the defendant to John O'Keefe. He's here now. If it's not quick, I'm not doing it. I just want to make sure nothing is wrong / will go wrong with when I'm not home. 7:55:44 on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, he's not a scammer. Half the quick stuff he doesn't even charge me for. 7:56:06 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, he just put the toilet seats on crooked. 7:56:28 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, status, 8:09:02 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, still here with an emoji, 8:09:18 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, said he's got to go to HD and probably be back mañana, 8:23:56 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, so 8:24:43 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, an emoji, 8:25:02 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, just trying to figure out if I need to be here. 8:25:51 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, what does it need? 8:26:01 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I don't know. He showed me some pieces that was all rusted with an emoji. I don't understand half this stuff. 8:26:42 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant on the water heater, 8:26:59 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, yes, 8:27:08 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, tell him to leave it. I'll take care of it Sunday or Monday, 8:28:30 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, no, it's okay. I can either meet him here or just shut off the alarm, 8:28:52 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, he used to work here while I was at work, 8:29:02 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, does he realize it will be whiteout conditions tomorrow a.m., 8:29:32 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, yeah, but he lives right down the road, 8:29:47 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, Karen, this storm is going to be intense. Can't drive. 8:30:19 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, okay, well, if he can't, he can't. 8:30:36 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, I'll do it Monday. 8:30:56 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I better not still have this problem on Monday. 8:31:22 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, you plan on being there. 8:31:43 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I'd to know I can take a hot shower there here if I need to. 8:32:14 p.m. on the 28th. Figured you'd be, from John O'Keefe to the defendant, figured you'd be in Canton until Monday, 8:32:32 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, I'm getting off my phone. Let me know what you're doing, 8:32:54 p.m. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I think the four of us together is toxic to this relationship. Would like to limit it, 8:33:16 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, you said so yourself for probably a year now, 8:33:52 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, blizzard tomorrow, nobody is going anywhere, 8:33:56 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, maybe I'll come back late tonight, bad snow is in the early a.m., 8:35:14 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I'll head up there in a few min, let me know if you leave, 8:35:26 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, an emoji, he says sure, 8:35:34 p.m. on the 28th. And that was the last of them.
We're almost done, sir.
And you can feel free to stand.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
So that presentation is a compilation of text messages and phone calls between John O'Keefe and the defendant on January 28, 2022.
Yes, that was.
Aside from that compilation, are there other text messages and phone calls that you've reviewed between John O'Keefe and the defendant that evening, January 28, 2002, going into past midnight, January 29, 2022?
Yes, there's more text messages.
And those text messages and phone calls, are they a separate compilation from this?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, this time I'd ask us to release Trooper Gaarino and recall him at a later date.
Yes. All right. There's no objection, Mr. Alessi, correct?
No objection, subject to eventual
Yes. All right. Thank you very much, Trooper. We'll see you another time.
Thank you, Your Honor. You just leave it.
Okay.
Is this the time for me to see counsel at sidebar?
You'll have a little more
Okay.
exhibits, Your Honor, may I?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to introduce exhibits, or clips 7 through 11.
Exhibit 34.
Thank you.
With the court's permission, could I begin with clip 7?
Yes.
When you walked out of the bar, how many drinks had you had?
I had probably about 4, and not 4 that I completed either. I didn't drink maybe more than a few sips at the waterfall.
And 4 drinks you felt fine to drive?
Yep.
Clip 8, please.
Okay.
And is the level of intoxication pretty high here for everybody?
It's happy.
Yeah.
It's
Because you'd had a lot to drink, right?
I wouldn't say I had like a normal amount. Like a vodka tonic every 40 minutes.
Okay. And so are you feeling like buzzed? And I'm not judging, I'm just trying to get a sense.
Buzzed.
Yeah.
Clip 9, please.
The final count of my alcohol intakes, probably about 5 or 6 or 4. The drinks that they were pouring me at McCarthy's, which is where I consumed most of the alcohol, was the weakest vodka tonic. It tasted just like all soda water with lime. Not that I need it to be a martini, but it might have had a splash of vodka in it. So I said, John, this drink tastes like it has no vodka in it. He said, just get a shot and mix it yourself. So each drink was being counted as a double. So I would get a vodka tonic, and then I would pour a shot into it, so that would count as 2. But frankly, it just felt like a regular cocktail. It was just a really weak pour, so I asked for a shot. So for my taste, it just tasted like that's the normal strength of what a drink should be. So I had maybe 2 or 3 that are being counted as 4 and 6. And I don't know. I felt fine. I felt like I was buzzed. And then there was one drink, the last one that was given to me, which I would have counted as 3, but they're counting as my 6th cocktail. The guys that we were with brought around the shots, and they gave me one that I didn't drink, but I poured it in my drink. So that's now my 5th and 6th drinks, with the 7th, which is a shot that all the men did, and I poured it. So that one glass that I'm holding, that I go into the waterfall with, has 3 drinks in it, a vodka tonic and 2 shots. And which is why John said to me, you're not leaving that drink here, like you haven't touched it and just poured a bunch of vodka. He's like, just take it with you, which was something he always did. So then I go into waterfall, and I put that drink down and I socialize most of the time. So that would have been my 5th, 6th, and 7th drinks. Then John orders me a drink at the waterfall that I don't drink, that he takes with him. And then there was a round of shots that Chris Howard bought that I did take. So that would have been the night. But I did not consume 9 vodka martinis or take 9 shots, depending on how you count it. And the last 2 drinks I didn't touch.
Clip 10, please.
I mean, I'm not as clear as I would be if I hadn't been drinking. I mean, I had drank, so, and that led me to question, like, could I have hit him? Did I run over his foot or hit him in the knee? Did I incapacitate him? I mean, I always drive with my music blasting ever since I was 16. And I know when John got out of the car to go into Fairview, I know my car was blasting because when I got in it the next morning to go look for him, I had to immediately turn it down. And I don't know, it's stormy. I have had a few cocktails. I didn't black out, but I wasn't as lucid as I would have been if I had gone to bed at 9 and drank a tea. But so I was fuzzier than I would have been if I had had no alcohol.
Clip 11, please.
How did you feel after that many drinks? When you got in the car, did you feel like you could drive, and did you feel how
I wouldn't have gotten on the expressway. I wouldn't have gotten on the expressway at 12:15 on January 29th. I mean, it was quiet. The roads were very quiet. You can see it on the videos. And I was going, you know, when I've had a few drinks and I drive, I always drive extra slow. So I know my alerts aren't as sharp as they should be. But I shouldn't have been driving. But I don't think I was driving. I know I wasn't driving recklessly. I mean, I've got plenty of video of myself driving all over the place. I put my car in John's garage, which is incredibly narrow, and I had a very oversized SUV. You see me, there's a video of me driving through the intersection when we leave Waterfall to go to Brian Albert's, and I was always taught by my father, even when you have a green light, you always should tap the brake. You don't know who's going to run red. And I see me doing that multiple times between 12 and 1 and 5 and 6 a.m. So I know I was driving safely, not as safely or as alert as I would be if I had no alcohol. But I was not driving recklessly by any measure.
Thank you. Your Honor, may we approach?
Yes.
My name is Katie McLaughlin. I'm 29 years old. I work for the town of Canton as a firefighter paramedic.
Did you study to become a paramedic firefighter?
Yes.
Why did you become interested in becoming a paramedic firefighter?
Objection.
I enjoy helping people. I have some family members who work in the healthcare field, and I just always thought it was interesting, and I wanted to do something meaningful with my life.
Did you have to have any special training or education to become a firefighter and paramedic?
Yes, you do. About 2 years of schooling. It's divided in between a didactic portion and then a clinical portion in the hospital and ambulance, so it takes about 2 years to finish.
You completed that?
Yes.
Did you become a firefighter at the same time you became a paramedic, or were those separate educations?
They're separate. I became a paramedic first before I became a firefighter.
Did you work as a paramedic before you became a firefighter actively in the field?
Yes, for a few years.
Do you remember about when you first started working as a paramedic?
2016 or 17.
And when did you first become a firefighter?
2017.
Do you remember when you first began working for the Canton Fire Department?
I believe it was May of 2017.
Are you still employed by the Canton Fire Department?
Yes.
In your paramedic training, did you learn how to provide care for people who are in need?
Yes.
Had you, before 2022, responded to different events or people's homes or public locations to help people?
Yes.
About how many calls? Could you estimate how many different calls you had been on as a paramedic or firefighter leading into the beginning of 2022?
Probably hundreds.
I want to ask you some background as a paramedic firefighter, your role as you see it. As a paramedic firefighter, are you part of law enforcement?
No.
Do you investigate crimes?
No.
Do you write police reports?
No.
When you're going to a scene and using your skills to help somebody, are you interested in whether or not somebody was involved or responsible for an event?
No.
What is your focus when you go to a scene to help somebody? What's your priority?
To help the patient to save someone's life.
Do you have a chance, or do you try to assess the patient, speak to them if they can speak to you?
If we can, yep.
Is there times when the person can't speak?
Yes.
If a person can't speak to you, is there a role that you take to try to get information to help assist the person?
Yes, you would go to a bystander and you try to gather as much information as you can to help the patient. More information for us helps the patient in their treatment, and it helps the hospital when we bring them there.
Is that responsibility or role separate and apart from police work?
Yes.
As a paramedic firefighter, are you involved in police work at all?
No.
Sometimes when you go to a scene and you try to help somebody, you write a report.
If you're in a particular role, you would write the report.
So when you go and arrive at a scene, is it fair to say you don't always write a report?
Correct.
And the purpose of the report, is that to try to help law enforcement?
No.
What's the purpose of when someone would write a report as a firefighter paramedic?
Depending on the call, there would be a report written by the officer on the call. That's just for logistics and dispatch information, what we responded to, and that's kind of simple. But the other report would be a medical report that the lead paramedic would write.
Were you working on January 29th, 2022?
Yes.
Was that an assigned shift for you?
Yes.
Did you volunteer or ask to work specially that night, or was that already assigned?
Ask it differently.
Was that assignment already set before that night?
Yes.
When you get a shift assigned to you, is it night by night, week by week, month by month?
It's just we rotate through. If you're on a group and you rotate through a schedule, it's set that you work 124, you have 1 day off, you work another 24, you have 5 off, and then the rotation begins again. So it's just a set schedule essentially, but it rotates through the weeks.
Was January 29, 2022 part of your set schedule?
Yes.
When you have a set schedule, are you assigned a specific role in the department that might change from shift to shift?
Yes.
What was your specific role on January 29, 2022?
For that shift, I was on the engine. I was the back step. So there's an engine driver, there's an engine lieutenant, and then there's one person in the back who's just a firefighter status, and we call that the back step.
As the back step that night, did you have any specific or general responsibilities if there was a call?
Generally, if it's a fire-related call, you deal with that. If it's a medical call, you're there to assist the paramedics that are on the ambulance, and you take directive from them, whatever they ask you to do or need you to do. You're just there to assist them so that they can best focus on the patient.
When you arrive at a scene and you're on the back step, are you basically at the directive of the leader of the group?
Yes.
That morning, around a little after 6 in the morning on January 29, 2022, do you remember a call or a tone coming in?
Yes.
Do you remember what it was for?
It was for a man down in the snow, or a man unresponsive in the snow.
Do you remember leaving the fire department that night?
I do.
Tell us, as you're leaving, what's happening.
So I'm in the engine, the command car with the captain who runs the shift started to 34 Fairview Road first. The ambulance was in front of us, and then we were behind the ambulance.
Did you know the address you were going to was 34 Fairview Road?
Yes.
And when you left the police station, the fire station, when you got on the back of the truck, did you know at that time who lived at 34 Fairview Road?
No.
Tell us a little bit about the conditions outside as you rode to 34 Fairview Road.
It was raining. I'm sorry, not raining. It was snowing pretty heavily. There was definitely snow on the ground at that point. It was windy. It was very cold.
Was there a storm?
Yes.
How long do you think it took to get from the fire station to Fairview Road?
Probably within 5 or 6 minutes.
When you first started pulling up towards Fairview Road, did you see anything?
Police cruisers and a civilian vehicle. And then we pulled up all kind of in front of that.
How many police cruisers did you see as you pulled up to Fairview Road?
I remember seeing one.
There was an ambulance in front of you?
Yes.
Did the police cruiser have their lights on?
Yes.
Not just their headlights, did they have the lights that are often referred to as blue lights or overhead lights?
Yes.
Did you hear any sirens?
No.
How about the ambulance? Did the ambulance have emergency lights?
Yes.
Did you hear any sirens?
No.
The fire truck, does the fire truck have emergency lights?
Yes.
Do you remember if those were activated?
Yep.
Does the fire engine have a siren?
Yes.
Was the siren activated?
No.
Why not?
We only use the sirens to kind of clear cars out of the road. So there's no need to use a siren when there's no cars on the road. So we're not just doing it in the middle of the morning to wake everybody up. It's just unnecessary.
When you first arrived at Fairview Road and you saw the emergency vehicles, did you see any people?
Yes.
While you were still in the fire truck or after you got out of the fire truck?
Probably after I got out.
After you got out of the fire truck, where do you go?
So I knew that they were working on a patient, so I knew they're going to need the stretcher. So myself and firefighter Walsh went right to the ambulance and retrieved the stretcher and brought it as close to the patient as we could.
At some point, did you see the patient?
Yes.
Was it he or she?
It was a man.
Where was he when you first saw him?
He was lying supine on the side of the road, off the curb, like into a lawn.
How close to him were you when you first saw him?
Well, I only made it to the curb where I brought the stretcher. He was maybe from here to that table, maybe.
When you stood on the curb and you saw that man lying, was his feet closest to you, his head, or his side?
His head would be closer to me.
Did you lift the man from the ground?
No.
Did some of your colleagues?
Yes.
After you brought the stretcher or the bed to the side of the road, did you remain there on the side of the road?
They lifted him on the backboard, they put him on the stretcher, and then they pretty much immediately started moving to bring him in the back of the ambulance.
Around the area where you first saw this man lying supine on the ground, was there anything other than ground? Were there any objects in that
I'm
area?
sorry?
Was there any objects near him?
I remember seeing a fire hydrant, and that's all I can really remember.
When you mentioned that he was lying about as close to that table as you, would 8 to 10 feet be a fair estimate?
I don't know that I could say.
Okay. At some point, did you receive further directions from anybody on the team asking you to do something?
Yes. Firefighter Flamati I was at the head of the stretcher with firefighter Flamati, and he asked me to try to gather more information and kind of see what happened and what's going on.
Did you have someone that you wanted to gather information from?
Yes. There was a woman who seemed to be really concerned and involved with the patient's status, and so I just kind of assumed that this would be the person that I could try to get more information from.
Did you take a guess?
Yeah,
The person that you try to get more information from, do you see that person in the courtroom today?
I do.
Could you point that person out and describe an article of clothing
Black
they
suit.
wear?
Black suit.
And do you see that person sitting in between?
I do. Her attorneys.
Did you approach that person?
I did.
Now, you mentioned you're not a police officer or a criminal investigator. What type of information are you hoping to get generally in these circumstances?
Some basic demographic info. You can answer a lot of questions by just asking a few very simple ones. So obviously you're trying to get his name and his date of birth. And then you ask questions if the patient has a medical history, if the patient takes daily medications, if the patient has any allergies. And that's all things that can help to sort of maybe explain why this person is in the position that he's in. For example, if someone reported that he had a heart condition or a seizure disorder or he was a diabetic, that would help us sort of, that's relevant information for us for his treatment and to pass on to the hospital.
Did you have a chance to speak with the person that you had pointed out?
I did.
When you spoke to that person, did you get a chance to ask any of those questions you would typically ask?
I did.
When you spoke to the person, what did they tell you?
She gave me his name, his date of birth. She denied him having any medical history or daily medications or allergies. I was kind of moving around. She was moving around the scene. So I was kind of moving around, trying to gather the information with her.
Did she say anything to you in addition to the typical background information that you would try to obtain from somebody?
Yes.
What did she say?
Well, I asked another question. Once we had come to a stop, I asked if there had been any significant trauma that happened that preceded this. And she answered with a series of statements that she repeated. I hit him. I hit him. There was a woman next to us who told her to calm down, stop talking, calm down, you're hysterical. So she repeated, I hit him. And a police officer asked her, said, you what? And she repeated it again, I hit him. And the officer then signaled for his sergeant to come down to the scene or down to where he was.
When she first told you that she had hit him, you said there was another woman next to her. Did you know who that woman was?
Not at the time.
Do you now know who that woman was?
I do.
And who was that?
Miss Jen McCabe.
Did you know Miss McCabe at that time?
No.
Do you know her personally now?
No.
Are you friendly or friends with her in any way?
No.
You mentioned that when the defendant said, I hit him, Ms. McCabe was trying to intervene?
Yes, it appeared that way.
What did it appear she was trying to do?
Trying to get her to calm down, to stop talking. It appeared that she was sustained. Disregard that comment.
Did Ms. McCabe interject verbally?
Yes.
After Ms. McCabe interjected and the defendant made those statements about hitting him, did you persist in getting more information, asking to clarify what she meant by I hit him?
No, I did not.
Why not?
A few reasons. I felt at that point, given the situation and how disturbing, and it was a very emotional situation, the woman was very upset. I didn't feel comfortable pushing and asking for more. I just didn't think that it was the right time for that, and it was also really not my place at that point, and I feel like that was something that the police that's more their role.
Asking follow-up questions about what she meant by I hit him, would that have helped your diagnosis and treatment of the man in any way?
It could have.
But you made the decision to stop asking her questions?
I did.
Did you ask her any more questions after she said, "I hit him"?
I decided not to.
At some point after you spoke to the defendant, did you go back to the ambulance and tell anybody, any of your colleagues?
I did.
And why would you do that?
That's the whole point of me trying to get more information, is that I get the information and I bring it back to the people who are treating the patient. So
Did you go back to the ambulance and repeat that information to your colleagues?
I did.
Did you have any other further role at the scene as far as helping the man or doing anything else
No, other than I drove the ambulance to the hospital.
with the gentleman in the ambulance?
Yes.
Did you learn who that person was?
Yes.
Did you know at the time who it was?
No.
When you got to 34 Fairview, did you recognize the home when you got there?
No.
Did you later learn who lived at that home?
Yes.
Did you know somebody who had lived at that home?
Yes.
Did you know that person lived there prior to that night?
I learned that she lived there.
Okay. And that person that you knew lived there, what is their name?
Caitlin Albert.
How did you know Caitlin Albert?
We went to high school together. We're in the same grade. We have mutual friends, and growing up, we had different friend groups, but those groups would often get together in bigger groups and hang out. I see her in group settings. I socialize with her occasionally. I don't have a personal relationship with her. I wouldn't consider her to be a friend of mine, but I do see her occasionally because of social events. I don't have a one-on-one. I don't have a close personal relationship with her.
Was she a friend on social media back at the time?
Yeah.
Since this event, have you been on any outings or trips with friends of hers, or in a group setting where she was present?
I don't remember ever seeing her since then.
Had you ever talked to her about your role that night?
Never.
Did the fact that somebody you knew lived in that house that have anything to do with your treatment and care that morning?
Not at all.
When you saw the man in the back of the ambulance, did you make note whether he was missing any clothing items?
He was missing a shoe, a sneaker.
I'd like, with the court's permission, to play Exhibit 4, part of it.
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if you can start at 6:13:45. Stop, please. Do you recognize whether or not you're in that video, ma'am?
Yes.
What color jacket are you wearing?
I'm in the red and yellow jacket.
Okay, continue, please. Stop, please. There are two yellow jackets, one on the left, one in the middle of the screen. Do you know which one is you?
I'm now in the middle of the screen.
Okay. Continue, please. Stop, please. Do you know who that is on the left of the screen near the flagpole?
Which one?
To the left. If you could play a few more seconds, Ms. Gilman.
It's 2 officers and a civilian woman.
Okay. How about on the left? Do you know who that is?
Oh, no.
And that time is 6:15:12. If you could continue, please. Stop, please. Is that you, ma'am, in the yellow?
Yes.
Okay, continue, please. Stop, please. Do you see yourself on that screen?
Yes.
What color jacket?
The red and yellow.
And who's to your left?
Miss Reed.
Across from you, with the blue or black jacket with the hood. Do you know who that is at this time?
Miss McCabe.
And you didn't know her at the time?
No.
Do you see the officer that's turned away from you?
Yes.
Do you know who he's speaking to?
No.
Do you know the exact moment that the defendant told you, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him?
I think it was just prior to that.
Okay, continue. Stop, please. Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay. Mr. Jackson?
Good morning, Ms. McLaughlin.
Good morning.
You indicated that one of the things that is paramount to the life-saving effort or the medical assistance that you and your colleagues provide is to determine what the cause is of the injury, correct?
To determine, just to gather as much information as we can about his history and like recent events that could have precipitated how we found the patient.
What you said on direct examination was, quote, what happened and what's going on, end quote, correct?
Yes.
So, for instance, the what happened, you want to find out and differentiate what happened. Is it a gunshot?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. When you're asking what happened or trying to determine what happened, for instance, one of the things you're trying to do is differentiate between a gunshot and a knife wound, correct?
Yes.
Or poison or ingestion of a poisonous substance or a heart attack.
Yeah, in this particular, this scenario, it's...
Next question.
Thank you. I'm asking about in general, when you're taking on information, trying to download information at a scene, you're trying to determine, as you said, quote, what happened, correct?
Yeah.
That's important to determine, correct?
Yeah.
You want to get the person's age. You want to get the person's date of birth. You want to get the person's allergies, for instance.
Yep.
But you also, paramount among those, you want to find out what happened. Why are we here? Correct?
Yes.
Did a person fall out of a tree? Or
Right.
stumble down a stair step? Correct?
Right.
In doing so, it's important to relay that information to others as well. You would agree with that, correct?
Yes.
That's the whole point, Ms. McLaughlin. You want to gather the information and then let others know exactly what happened and document that as best you possibly can so that the life-saving efforts or the medical assistance can continue for the patient, correct?
Yeah, you have to share the information that you got with the people who are providing care.
And one of the ways you do that is by writing it down, correct?
No.
Happened?
To the ambulance, correct?
So you went to the ambulance with the defendant?
Yeah.
And was Mr. Becker with you?
Yes.
What happens when you get to the ambulance?
I mean, so it was snowing, and it was more to kind of just get everybody into a nice, warmer location where it wasn't snowing or windy or anything like that. And we were discussing that, you know, we have a Section 12 that states we, you know, regardless of if you want to go, we have to take you to the hospital. She was arguing that she really didn't need to go to the hospital, and we were trying to convince her to go to the hospital because once the Section 12 is written, it doesn't matter what the patient says, we have to get them there one way or the other, whether it's cooperatively restrained or chemically restrained with sedatives or anything.
It's not a voluntary order?
It is not a voluntary order.
Inevitably, did the defendant agree to go with you to the hospital?
Yes.
When you were going to return to the hospital, was the defendant placed in the back of the ambulance where a patient would be?
Correct. So how we operate for anybody that's a Section 12 or anybody that is under the influence of anything, we always operate with 2 people in the back of the ambulance. So myself and my partner, Jason Becker, were back there. And then we had to take somebody from the engine company and have them drive to the hospital, and that was Sam Park.
Sam Bach?
Park, P-O-C-H.
Thank you. Before you left, before you started to drive away from Fairview, were you having any conversations with the defendant?
Yes.
Can you share with the jury what those conversations were about?
So we were talking. She was upset. She kept asking if there was any chance her husband could be alive, and even sitting outside in the snow with no coat on for many hours.
Did she indicate what many hours meant? How many?
No.
How often did she raise the issue of whether or not, or how long he could be out for?
I'd say at least 3 to 4, maybe more.
Part of your job is to care for patients?
Correct, yes.
Was part of your job to try to get them to the location safely?
Yes.
And sometimes you treat patients with physical injuries, don't you?
Oftentimes it is physical injuries, yes.
Are you trained when you're trying to transport somebody on how to interact with them?
Yes. Well, sometimes if they're upset, in this instance, she kept asking if there was any chance that he could be alive, and that we really didn't know what was the patient that Ambulance 1 took. We really didn't know what his condition was, and but figuring that it was a hypothermia type case, being the conditions outside, we were trying to give her hope that there is a saying in the medical field, you're not dead until you're warm and dead. And I was basically, there's stories of children falling through ice and falling into rivers and being underwater for multiple hours and coming out, being resuscitated and having no neurological deficits. So I was telling her those stories just kind of to say, look, let's be sure we'll get to the hospital, we'll find out more there. Just trying to give her any sort of hope that her husband would be alive.
Can you describe her demeanor when she was in the back of the ambulance with you during your interactions with her?
She would go from pretty upset, crying. One instance where she kept saying,
I can't take care of these kids. I can't take care of these kids. They're not my kids, and they're not his kids. And at that point, I understood who Ambulance 1 had taken, because John was pretty well known in the town for taking on the care of his niece and nephew. So I said, listen, it's okay. It looks like you have a very strong support system. And then Miss Reed said, do you know Carrie Roberts? And she had been crying, and she picked her head up and said, do you know Carrie Roberts? And I said, a matter of fact, I do. And she said, anybody who knows Carrie Roberts wouldn't say that about her. And I said, well, she did come to out at early in the morning to look for your husband in a blizzard. And she just rolled her eyes and put her head back down. And I thought it was just bizarre.
Objection. Move to strike.
I'll strike that last sentence.
Would you describe her demeanor as even through that ride?
No.
How long did it take to get to the hospital?
I mean, you can refer to my partner's ambulance trip report. I'm sure it has the...
Do you have it right with you, sir?
I do not, no.
Well, let me ask you.
I would guess about 15 to 20 minutes, somewhere in there.
You don't have an exact memory?
No.
When you get to the hospital with a patient under these circumstances, do you leave them at the door?
No.
What do you do?
We have to hand off care. So we go in and we have to give a report to a nurse to let them know what their condition is, why they're coming to the hospital, and what we found taking them to the hospital.
When you got to the hospital with Miss Reed, did you interact with the hospital personnel?
Yes.
Do you typically, after you hand off a patient to staff, do you leave?
Typically, yes. This time, Miss Reed was, I'm going to say, not really cooperative with the nurse there. The nurse was asking her to get into a Johnny, give a urine sample. She was not cooperative. The nurse tried to work with her, had an ER tech go and ask the doctor if she had to get into a Johnny. She came back. She said, yes, she's a patient. She has to do all the normal stuff. We really didn't feel comfortable actually leaving the general area. I don't know if it was just shift change or what, but security wasn't there. And with her demeanor, we just didn't feel comfortable leaving the nurse by herself with Miss Reed.
You said that there was some difficult times. Was there some difficulty about the defendant accepting wearing a Johnny?
Yes, she was refusing to get into the Johnny, and the nurse kept saying, well, you got to get into this Johnny. The nurse did try to work with her and you know, asked the doc if...
Objection.
I'll allow that.
And so the ER doc, the ER tech had to come back and say, yes, she has to get into the Johnny. And at that point, she did. She you know, seemed to have calmed down and was getting into the Johnny. Security personnel had shown up, and we felt comfortable being able to kind of leave the nurse and the tech on their own.
Before security came, was there difficulty in her providing a urine sample?
Objection.
Do you know the answer to that?
Can you ask the question again? I'm sorry.
Why don't you ask it a little different?
Sure. Do you remember whether she was giving the nurses a hard time about a urine sample?
Yes.
Objection.
So break that down, Mr. Brennan. The objection is sustained.
You said that she was giving nurses a hard time.
She didn't want to give a urine sample. And then the nurses kept asking her to, you know, this is the cup, you pee in the cup.
Objection. Not funded.
No, I'm going to allow it.
You were there and saw this, right?
I saw it, yes.
Oh. Thank you. I have no further questions.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Sir, you knew before you got into Ambulance 2 that you were heading to Fairview Road for what is called a Section 12, correct?
We were dispatched for a Section 12, correct?
Right. And that was not your first call for a Section 12, right?
No.
You had been in that job since 2006?
Yes.
You've handled a number of them over the years, correct?
Correct.
The fact that the call came in as a Section 12 gave you some idea of the nature of the issue that you might be dealing with, correct?
We had an idea that it was for a psychological issue, correct?
Right. It told you that somebody at that location was suspected of being in some type of either psychiatric or emotional distress, correct?
Yes.
And on your crew, or of your crew, I should say, you were the one to drive the ambulance to the residence, correct?
I drove to the address at Fairview.
Now, you've said that when you got to Fairview Road, you don't recall the time, but you do recall that there were still emergency vehicles on scene, correct?
I do.
There was nobody lying in the front lawn of 34 Fairview at that time, correct?
Correct.
And do you know how much later, after 6 a.m., you would have gone there?
You'd have to refer to my partner's report.
You don't know if it was minutes or hours later?
It was minutes. It was within the hour. I don't know.
Within the hour,
Yep.
Okay. And you said that there were, or you testified that there were 2 police vehicles on scene, correct?
At least 2.
At least 2. There could have been more than 2.
It certainly could have been.
And those police vehicles in such a situation, particularly with the snow falling down, would have had their blue lights flashing?
I'm not exactly sure if they did or they didn't. Sometimes the police shut off their lights when they arrive on scene. Sometimes they don't.
Okay, so you don't have a memory one way or the other?
No, nothing sticks out.
But those police vehicles certainly were not hidden. They were in plain view, correct?
I would say so.
Minimum of 2, maybe more. Correct?
Yes.
And there was also a gray SUV parked near that residence?
Correct.
And there was a fire engine there as well, correct?
Correct.
You called it our engine, right? That was from your...
Well, it would be engine 3.
Engine 3, from
or
your
at least
station.
the Station 1 engine.
I'm sorry?
The Station 1 engine. So Canton Fire has 2 fire stations. We were coming from the second station. The Station 1 engine is the one that responded to Fairview.
Okay, and that was a typical large fire engine, correct?
Yeah.
And did the fire engine have its lights on?
I assume it did, only because we rarely shut our lights off on a scene.
Sure. And there were police officers walking about, milling about?
Yes.
Do you know how many?
I know I spoke with Officer Sarif and Officer Mullaney.
Okay. And
so at least 2.
And you know them by name?
Yeah, Canton's a fairly small town, so you run into the police on a regular basis.
Sure, and you work cooperatively with them, correct?
Yes.
Were there other police officers besides Sarif and Mullaney?
I'm sure there could have been, but I don't recall ever speaking with them or interacting with them.
Okay. Were there other EMTs or firefighters there when you got there?
Just my Lieutenant Woodbury, and then firefighter Sam Pock.
Okay, and they were in charge of Engine 1?
Well, the Station 1 engine.
The Station 1 engine? Okay. And there were also civilians on scene, correct?
Correct.
So you would agree that there was a lot of activity outside 34 Fairview, correct?
There was a fair amount of activity.
I mean, there were people and vehicles and lights surrounding that residence, correct?
I assume so, yes.
Your Honor, could you please again introduce yourself to the jury, spell your last name for the record?
I'm Trooper Nicholas Guarino, Guarino.
You would explain what an extraction report is.
Yes, it's the information in the cell phones. We can create PDFs or portable cases from information, whatever is specified.
An extraction report, can it be general or more narrow?
Yes, it can be.
I want to introduce a few more extraction reports that we didn't get to last time.
Okay.
In this case, did you use Mr. O'Keefe's phone to create an extraction report that included all of his calls from the 28th and the 29th of January 2022?
Yes, I did.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
you a document? Do you recognize that document?
Yes, I do.
And what is it?
It's John O'Keefe's call logs from everyone from the 29th to the 28th. Right.
I move this into evidence, please.
No objection, Your Honor.
Thank you. 65?
Did you create an extraction report that included a text message between the defendant and Jennifer McCabe?
Yes, I did.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Handing you a document, do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell us what that is?
Yes, it's the text chain from the defendant to Jen McCabe.
I move this into evidence, please.
No objection, Your Honor.
Thank you. Exhibit 66?
One moment. Thank you. With the court's permission, could Mr. Garino read this to the jury?
Okay.
Could you kindly read that and explain it to the jury?
With all the information on it.
Yes.
This is from the defendant to Jen McCabe, 7:26:52 a.m. on the 29th. It says, "Can you send me Kerry's number?"
Thank you. Did you further create an extraction?
Sorry, Mr. Brennan. In terms of that reading of the document, you just have to check on that, please. Sorry.
No problem.
Yes.
Can you review that again?
Yes.
And do you see who that's from? And who it's to?
I'm sorry, it's from Jen McCabe to the defendant.
And what does it say?
Can you send me Kerry's number?
What time and date?
That is 7:26:52 a.m. on April 29th, 2022.
Thank you. Did you do a further extraction report from John O'Keefe's phone with text messages between him and a person named Kaylee?
Yes, I did.
May I approach?
Yes.
You recognize that?
Yes.
What is it?
It's the text chain between John O'Keefe and Kaylee.
The date?
It goes, sorry, it's kind of dated. January 28th, 2022 to January 29th, 2022.
Thank you. I'd move this into evidence.
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Exhibit 67?
Okay, Trooper Garino, we're done with extraction reports.
Okay.
Did you have an opportunity to obtain phone messages, phone calls, and text messages between the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe?
Hold on. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Trooper Garino, did you have an opportunity to obtain phone calls, voice messages, and text messages from the defendant to Mr. O'Keefe's phone on the evening of January 29th, 2022?
Yes, I was.
Where did you get the phone call records from?
From John O'Keefe's phone.
Where did you get the voicemails from?
Also from John O'Keefe's phone.
Where did you get the text messages from?
From John O'Keefe's phone.
Did you have an opportunity to take those phone calls, the voice messages, and the text messages and put them in a chronological order?
Yes, I did.
Did you include all of the phone calls, all the text messages, and all of the voicemails?
Between John O'Keefe and the defendant, yes.
Did you create a PowerPoint to put them in a chronological order?
Yes.
May I approach you, Your Honor?
Yes. Show Mr. Alessi.
Sorry. Showing you a binder, sir. Could you open it up? Tell us what this is.
Yes, this is the phone calls and text messages between the defendant and John O'Keefe, as well as the voicemails. Well,
Is there a package in the front of that binder?
yes, there is.
And what is that package?
It says defendant's voicemails and on 1/29/2022. The USB thumb drive that should have those files on.
Your Honor, I move this binder as the next exhibit. It would include both the PowerPoint presentation as well as a clip of the phone calls.
No objection, Your Honor.
Should, yes. Do you need the thumb drives?
I don't.
Okay.
Mark this, please.
Exhibit 68.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With the court's permission, I would ask that Trooper Greeno take us through the PowerPoint presentation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is it okay to begin? Okay.
Please.
So these are the phone calls on the 29th. So at 12:33:35 a.m., the defendant calls John. That phone call is not answered. 12:34:09 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:34:38 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:35:09 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. 12:35:35, the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:36:09 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered.
Trooper Greeno, let me stop you there for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Did you look into any internet connection between the defendant's phone and the router and the internet connection at Meadows Ave, John O'Keefe's home that night?
Yes. At 12:36:39 a.m., the defendant's phone auto connects to the Wi-Fi PatsFam 123.
Are you familiar with the router at Mr. O'Keefe's home?
I have not done a look at it in person, but that's the known network that's listed under it. There's two, PatsFam 123 and O'Keefe 74.
Did
Two
you
names.
learn the range that a connection must be in order to connect to his router?
Yes, so depending on the router, it's either a 2.4 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz radio band or signal band, I should say. Depending on which one it's connecting to, which band, it's either 150-foot indoor range or up to 300 feet outdoor. So again, when you pull into your home, sometimes you can still be connected to your home Wi-Fi in the driveway.
And again, can you give us the time of the connection between the defendant's phone and Mr. O'Keefe's router at Meadows Ave that night?
Yes, 12:36:39 a.m.
Please continue.
At 12:36:40 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. At 12:37:08 a.m., the defendant calls John, and voicemail number 1 is left with voice.
Ms. Gilman, would you kindly play the voicemail for 12:37:08?
At 12:38:26 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:39:03 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:39:37 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:40:43 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. At 12:41:35 a.m., the defendant calls John. Voicemail number 2 is left. Some beeping noises, appears to be a butt dial or accidental call.
Ms. Gilman, could you play the voice message at 12:41:35?
The defendant then texts John O'Keefe at 12:55:31 a.m. on the 29th, "I'm going home." The defendant texts John O'Keefe, "See you later," at 12:55:50 a.m. on the 29th. At 12:58:19 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:58:47 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:59:24 a.m., the defendant calls John. Voicemail number 3 is left with voice.
Ms. Gilman?
John, I'm here with your kids. Nobody knows what the pervert.
At 1 a.m. and 26 seconds, the defendant calls John. It's not answered. At 1 a.m. 49 seconds, the defendant calls John. Voicemail number 4 is left. It's 1 second called, no sound.
Ms. Gilman?
That was it. The defendant texts John O'Keefe, "Your kids are cucking alone," at 1:02 a.m. on the 29th. The defendant texts John O'Keefe, "I'm back in Mansfield. The kids are home alone," 1:04:14 a.m. on the 29th. At 1:10:17 a.m., the defendant calls John. Voicemail number 5 is left with voice.
Ms. Gilman?
Yeah, it's 1 in the morning. I'm with your nephew. You pervert. You're a pervert.
At 1:10:44 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. At 1:12:18 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 1:12:46 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 1:13:13 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. At 1:14:11 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 1:14:44 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. 1:16:10 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. 1:16:38 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. At 1:17:37 a.m., the defendant calls John. So when voicemail 6 is left with voice.
Ms. Gilman?
John, I'm going home. I cannot babysit in these. I need to go home. You are using me right now. You're another girl. Kaylee's sleeping next to me. You're a loser. Go.
At 1:18:38 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. At 4:38:14 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. 4:38:49 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 4:39:39 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 4:40:05 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 4:42:05 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 4:42:54 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 4:45:10 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:04:27 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:21:28 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:21:58 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:23:26 a.m., the defendant calls John. Voicemail number 7 is left with voice.
Ms. Gilman?
At 5:24:27 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:25:28 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:26:14 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:28:16 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:28:43 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:29:21 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:29:46 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:30:15 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:30:52 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:31:21 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:36:29 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 6:03:02 a.m., the defendant calls John, and voicemail number 8 is left with some voice and noise and background.
Ms. Gilman, could you play that, please?
Yes, I need someone to report you. 34 beautiful Vietnam living in Capitol North. Yeah. Okay, I know. Where's the blanket? I don't see blanket, Terry. Yes, I need somebody.
If we have the lights on, please. I have no further questions. At this point, I want to go back and show you some video. Have you seen video in this case before?
Yes.
I'd like to ask the court's permission to display Exhibit 4, and I would like to walk through some of the video.
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if you kindly put on Exhibit 4. I'd like to start at 6:09:57. Ms. Gilman, if you can take us to the arrival at Fairview. Could you stop there, please? Ms. McCabe, do you recognize this scene?
Yes.
Is that morning?
Yes.
The car directly in front of this dash cam, do you know whose vehicle that is?
Kerry Roberts.
On the left, we see somebody with a blue parka or jacket. Do you know who that is?
I believe that's me.
Can you continue to play, please? Can you stop there, please? Does that fairly depict your first interaction with law enforcement?
Yes.
Do you see the flagpole in that video?
Yes.
And is that the area where you found John?
Yes.
I'd like to move forward in the video. If we can move forward to 6:14:45, please. Could you stop there? Can you identify people on that video from right to left, if you can?
I don't know the officer. That's myself. I believe behind me, that's Miss Reed.
And this is about, well, let me get the time correctly. 6:14:47. And do you know where John is at this point?
Are they lifting him to the left?
Okay. Could you continue, please, Ms. Gilman? stop there? The person all the way to the left near the flagpole, do you know who that is?
I believe Carrie Roberts.
And is that the area where John was found?
Yes.
And that's at 6:15 a.m.? If you don't know, that's okay. Do you know what Miss Roberts was doing at 6:15 a.m.?
My guess is
I don't want you to guess, just if you know.
I don't know.
Okay. Now, you're over to the right. Is that you?
Yes.
Okay. Continue, please. Is that Carrie on the left?
Yes.
Stop, please. On the right, do you see yourself?
Yes.
And which person are you?
I'm the one next to the one with the fluorescent yellow.
Is your back to us?
Yes.
To the right in yellow. Do you know who that is?
I don't.
Continue, please. Continue. Stop, please. Do you see the defendant move from the right to the left?
Yes.
Do you see the yellow jacket?
Yes.
Do you know whether or not that's the woman first responder?
I believe so, yes.
Do you know why the officer moved the defendant over to from right to left?
I don't.
Okay, continue, please. Stop. At that part, is there a conversation between the defendant and the first responder?
Yes.
Are you listening?
Yes.
Continue. Stop. Do you see the officer that was with you in the group?
Yes.
Do you see him now turned away from the group speaking to somebody else?
I do.
Continue, please. Thank you. If you could move ahead to 619, please. Is that you, Ms. McCabe and Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Is that Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Stop for a moment. Do you know at which point you went to the officer's car and sat in the back with Ms. Reed?
I believe it's right after this.
Can you continue, please? Is that Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Stop, please. Was it before or after that moment that you sat with the defendant and Ms. Roberts stood outside the car and you prayed?
I'm not exactly sure from
Okay.
that video.
That's fine. If we could move forward to 6:23:40, please. At this time, are you still with the defendant behind this car in some spot?
Yes, I am.
Is it during this time, 6:23 and 6:24, you tried to make those searches at the defendant's request?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if you can move forward to 6:26:15. Pause, please. Ms. McCabe, do you see anybody returning to Ms. Roberts' car in that area?
Yes.
And who did you see?
I saw myself, and I'm standing outside of the car speaking to Officer Lank. I saw Kerry go up and near her car. I'm not sure if she went into it, and I saw someone walk Miss Reed into the car.
Is it around this time you have a conversation with Mr. Lank?
Yes.
And what does he tell you again around this time?
He's, at this point, I think, asking me questions about what had happened, and then soon after, he asks me to go into my sister's house.
Ms. Gilman, if you can fast forward to 6:34:15, please. Stop, please. You described that the house had no lights on. Is that a fair depiction of,
Yes.
of the view?
Yes.
Do you see a figure walking up the driveway?
Not on this pause clip, but I did see it, yes.
Let's play it and see if you can identify.
Yes, I can see myself walking up.
Where are you now?
I'm walking up the path to go up to the stairs into the house.
And this is at the request of Officer Lank?
Yes.
And you described for us you went in and woke up your sister and brother-in-law?
Yes.
Could we move forward to 6:39, please? Stop. And do you see something happen with the house at that point?
Yes.
Okay. And what happens?
Light went on.
I'll note it's 6:39:08. Thank you, Ms. Gilman. After first responders took John and you had gone in your sister's house, what did you do next?
Next, after Officer Lang spoke to my husband, Kerry Roberts, her and I had a conversation. She was going to go pick up John's parents in Braintree. At first, I had told her I would go with her, but then Officer Lang said that I needed to, one of us had to stay at Fairview to speak to the, I believe it was the state troopers that would be coming.
Did you stay at Fairview?
I did, yes.
What was your mental state at that point?
Again, I was in shock. The best way I can describe it is the feeling of I'm present and everything's going on around me, and I'm just trying to process and make sense of everything.
Did you speak to your sister about what happened?
Yes.
Did you speak to your brother-in-law about what happened?
Yes.
And were they giving you any comfort or support?
Yes, they were being very comforting and supportive.
As you were waiting at Fairview, did anybody else come to the house?
Well, my husband, Matt, had arrived. A little while later, Julie Albert had arrived. She was dropping something off, and then Brian Sr. called her in.
Is Julie Albert the wife of Chris Albert?
Yes, she is.
And Brian Albert and Chris Albert are brothers?
Correct.
When she arrived, did you talk to her?
Yes.
Were you in a group? Were you talking to people privately?
No, we were all sitting around the kitchen table.
And why were you talking to everybody?
We were trying to figure out what had happened. They were trying to be supportive, trying to help me.
What was your mood?
I was extremely concerned. I was calling Kerry, trying to get updates about John. I was worried about John, his family, about Kaylee.
At that point, did you know whether John was going to live?
I had a very strong, I think deep down I knew that John was gone. But, you know, there's, until you hear it, I think there was that little bit of hope, maybe.
Did you speak to anybody but Kerry, who was not at the home that morning?
I believe I spoke, yeah, Miss Reed.
You had a conversation?
Yes, I spoke to her when she was in the ambulance.
Did you speak to her again later that day?
No, I think I texted her asking her for Kerry's number because I didn't have it.
Did you hear back?
No.
Did you ever speak to Miss Reed again?
No, I've never spoken to her again.
When you were trying to get information from Kerry and you were in Fairview, did anybody else other than the people you've described arrive at Fairview?
Chris Albert, Brian Higgins showed up, and Chris Albert.
Did you know Brian Higgins?
I knew him as a friend of Brian's.
Did you see him at the waterfall that night before?
Yes, I did.
And after you arrived at Fairview that night, after leaving the waterfall, was Brian Higgins one of the people there?
Yes.
And did you talk about what had happened in front of Brian Higgins as well?
Yes.
Was there a group discussion?
I wouldn't say discussion. I would just say, like, for instance, someone would ask me a question because everybody just, this didn't make sense to anybody. No one knew what had happened.
Agreed.
So just move on.
And so was there a lot of questions about what you saw and heard?
Yes.
You mentioned earlier that you felt like you were in a state of shock. Did you feel like you were still in that state, or were things changing mentally?
Little by little, as I sat there, I started, things started coming back to me that had been said to me earlier.
Did something significant come back to you about what happened earlier or what you heard?
Yes.
And what is that?
When Miss Reed stated to myself and the female, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
And did anything else over the course of that morning come back to you about that moment?
Throughout, when I was still at Fairview, or throughout the day?
Still at Fairview.
I believe that was maybe the main thing. I can't be sure what time, what memories came back.
When you remembered the defendant's statements to the first responder, Did you decide to do something with that information?
Yes, Officer Lang had said if I, remembered anything or needed anything before the state, the state police came to give him a call.
Did you?
I did, yes.
And you knew Officer Lang?
I did, yes.
Were you comfortable calling him?
Yes, I was.
Did you tell him the information that you had remembered?
I just asked him to come back to Fairview.
Did he?
He did, yes.
When he came back, did you speak to him?
Yes, I did.
Were you with the group or were you alone?
No, it was with the group.
And did you tell him what you had remembered?
I did, yes.
How long did you stay at Fairview for?
I believe somewhere between 11:30. I'm being approximate with my times. Officer Proctor called me from the state police.
Do you know how he got your number?
No.
Did you have a discussion with him?
He said he would like to come by and question me, and I'm not sure if he said at your house or if I said I need to go home because I had 4 kids at home that were still sleeping, and I knew that I had to go home to them and eventually break this news to them and comfort them, and I knew that was going to be a whole nother situation to deal with.
Did you speak to him on the phone before you went home or after?
A quick phone call. I'll see you at my house.
At that point, did you share any information with him?
No, not on the phone.
Did you return home?
I did, yes.
Do you remember about what time that was?
I'm going to say 11:30 or after, approximate.
General?
General, yeah.
Okay. When you got back home, did you have a meeting or speak with Mr. Proctor?
I did, yes.
Was it a phone call or an in-person conversation?
He came into my house with Officer Buchanan.
Okay, him and Trooper Buchanan came in?
Yes.
Was there anybody else at your home?
My husband was home, and my brother-in-law, Brian Albert, came over.
Did you speak to them?
Yes.
Did you tell them any additional information at that point?
The troopers or?
The troopers.
Yes. I know I had said what Karen had said to me, and then she had said I hit him. Could I have hit him? I told them how she showed up at my house. I just basically gave them the events of that morning.
At that point, did you mention anything about the defendant's broken taillight?
At that conversation, no.
Did they leave?
They did leave, yes.
At some point, did they reach out to you again, or did you reach out to them?
At some point, I had another conversation with them a few hours later. I'm not sure if they called me or if I called them.
Do you know what generally the content of that conversation was?
Yes, I had remembered that Karen had told me about her taillight.
As you're processing that morning, are you trying to think and recreate the event, or are you trying to put it out of your mind?
I couldn't get it out of my mind.
While you were at home, did you receive any updates from anybody, Kerry Roberts or anybody, about John?
Yes, when I was still at the Alberts, Kerry had given me word that, John had passed. Then once I got home, I know different friends who were starting to hear.
Without content, were you receiving contacts, calls, text
Yes.
messages from other people?
Yes.
And were you reaching back out to other people?
Some, yes.